What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you today with Dynasty Decisions, episode number 77. You guys know what we do around here. We break down your Dynasty teams, give you all the goodness, talking about trades, talking about rookie drafts, talking about rebuilding and contending. But before we get into it, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We have a huge announcement, though, so we're not going to waste any time. Let's hit that damn intro.
All right, so Danny teased it before the intro. We are shutting down our Patreon and our Discord effective after the NFL draft. But don't worry, we have partnered with Mason over at Fantasy and Dynasty Football Flock, Zach and Badake over at Fantasyland, and Chris and Pierre at Fantasy Endgame to bring you guys a brand new site, a new home for our bonus content on Patreon and our Discord community, flockfantasy.com. If you guys are in our Patreon already or in our Discord already, you would have heard this announcement last week, but we are officially announcing it to the public on YouTube. What this essentially is, like I said, is a relocation of all of our bonus content, our rankings, our extra videos. Only now, instead of just getting our bonus content, you'll also be getting the bonus content of everything that Flock has to offer, Endgame has to offer, and Fantasyland has to offer as well. So overall, this is just a much better, bang for your buck, so to speak, because you're getting a couple different channels bonus content. Instead of our rinky-dink little Patreon, you can access a website that is fully functioning with developers to see our rankings, to see our databases, our video content, articles on a state-of-the-art site, like I said. The new site is flockfantasy.com, and using the promo code FSE or clicking the link down below in the description, you can support us directly just the way you would on our normal Patreon, and you'll still get access to our rankings, all the other creators' content. You guys can see the benefits on the screen right now. Each of us creators have our own benefits for using our codes versus the others. So if you guys already subscribe to some of these channels as well, you may have to decide whose code to use. But for using our code, you'll get access to the priority Dynasty decision submissions that you would have gotten the way that you would subscribe to our Patreon. And you'll also get in the Mother Flocker tier, Dynasty decisions, like skip the line, basically. So the Flockers will skip the free submissions. Mother Flockers will skip everybody. And then also you'll get access to private Discord channels by each tier and Listener League priority. And we are going to be starting a Listener League at the end of this week for anybody that signs up to the new site. So if you have, an inkling to sign up, definitely do it ASAP, because you'll get access to a Listener League with us. And this site is basically just the start too. We have a doc of like 10 to 15 more features that we're going to be rolling out in the next, 2-3 months, some of them in the next couple weeks or so. So again, site is live now, flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE to support us directly the way you would on our normal Patreon, and get in touch with us if you have any questions, if you've signed up on the site, to make sure that you are included in the drawing for the new Listener League. Like I said, Mother Flockers will have, bonus entries into that Listener League. Regular Flockers will get access to the whole site and everything and all that shebang. But let's get into the first team. We got the first one here from Matt P. He is a patron member. He said he would love our thoughts on the following team. It's a one quarterback league, so not a super flex. You guys can see the team on the screen there. Trey Lance, Geno Smith, Mac Jones is the main QBs. Christian McCaffrey, J.K. Dobbins, Rashad White, Miles Sanders, and a couple other guys there. Chase, A.J. Brown, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Gabriel Davis, Wan'Dale Robinson, etc. at wide receiver. Mark Andrews and T.J. Hawkinson as his tight ends. Looks like he has all of the 8th picks in his draft this year, 108, 208, 308. And it looks like he has pretty much everything else in terms of normal draft picks. He didn't actually list his future picks. So said he's going into the 4th year of this league. He got murdered by injuries this past year, CMC and some other guys. Drafting Chase and London basically out of his draft picks because he dealt with injuries. And then he finally had a decent season last year, was 2nd in potential points, but got knocked out of the playoffs first week. He said his team is ranked 2nd according to Keep Trade Cut, based on just like value and where players are ranked. At quarterback, he kind of gives his own valuations of each position. He said he loves Lance's potential, but he doesn't know if he's going to have, a major quarterback locked in. Running back said we'll be looking to sell Rashad White before the NFL draft, praying for a good Miles Sanders landing spot as a free agent, and hopefully that Dobbins gets new competition. So a little shaky at running back. Some things need to break his way. Obviously, wide receiver core is very solid. We'll attempt to sell Gabe Davis. Tight end, he loves the current security of having 2 tight ends, but obviously he will try and sell TJ Hawkinson. So basically, what are our thoughts on his team? Who would we be targeting, and the next steps in the future to get to the playoffs next season?
So you definitely have the infrastructure to go and compete again. You kind of mentioned here you were second in the league in potential points. Got a little unlucky last year. So looking at the team, I mean, you got your anchors at running back for the most part with McCaffrey and Dobbins, and then you got upside at the position with Miles Sanders, Rashad White, other options there potentially to add even in the NFL draft over there with your 208 and your 308. So you're set at that position, wide receiver clearly as well. Like you said, you're very happy with that group. Like I said, or like you said, kind of in the blurb, if you can get like a more stable option than Trey Lance with that rushing upside, like I would look to see maybe would Trey Lance plus the 108 get me into like Lamar Jackson range? If you can make that type of move, then you have a for sure needle breaker at the quarterback position. You already know you want to compete. You're just not really taking on that risk of Trey Lance potentially, having a follow with the 49ers. At least we know with Lamar Jackson that no matter where he plays, even if he's not a Raven this upcoming year, he's going to give you, top 5, top 3 overall upside at the position.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about potentially moving TJ Hawkinson, potentially moving Rashad White or Miles Sanders, potentially moving Gabriel Davis. If you don't want to go all the way up to the Lamar range, or hell, it's a one quarterback league. Maybe that range is not all that far fetched to say that all you would need to pay is like Trey Lance and Rashad White. If the Bucs don't add any major free agent running backs and you want to get out before the NFL draft, you might be able to get up to a difference-making quarterback, like you said. So I'd probably be using Trey Lance to maneuver up to a better quarterback because to me, he's just a far riskier option. And you already kind of have that stability of Geno Smith, Mac Jones behind him. So you can afford to go after somebody a little bit more risky if you wanted to. And the other thing, too, is if you wanted to just sell Trey Lance straight up, you probably could just take Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young at 108 in your draft if you wanted to and supplement your QB production, ceiling long term that way. But overall, like you said, this is a competitive team. You have a great receiver core. You have a pretty solid running back core. You have at least one stud tight end, if not two, that you can move off of one of them. And then your quarterback position, once that's figured out, you should be ready to go, ready to compete. So I would say, I mean, overall, you've kind of made a good assessment of this team. It looks like you just kind of have to, work the trade market a little bit. As far as like players that I'd be targeting, I mean, the standard buy low candidates would kind of apply altogether. Even in super flex leagues, we think Deshaun Watson is one of the biggest buy lows. So if you want better, stable quarterback production, you could see how much more on top of Trey Lance Deshaun Watson would cost you. And it might not be that much. It might just be, Trey Lance and Wan'Dale Robinson to like a Giants fan or something like that. It might not cost you all that much more. So I think, overall, you're in a great spot. You're probably ready to compete once you figure out your QB situation. We can probably move on to the next team here, which is from Brian Harris, obviously a faithful submitter of many Dynasty teams here. 12-team best ball super flex league, 2-point tight end premium. So high value to the tight end position. You start 14 in this league format. So a very deep starting roster. Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence is his main quarterbacks, Dameon Pierce, Alexander Madison, James Cook, etc. Pretty barren running back core outside of a couple upside pieces. Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney, Michael Gallup, etc. at wide receiver, and then a couple decent tight end options, Schultz, Goddard, Chig, all those type of dudes. No first, no second in 2023, but you have a couple third rounders and then all of his picks in the future draft classes. So he says it's kind of a very unique roster. And I would say, that league format is pretty unique. Very wild league format. Best ball start 14 with 10 flexes. So aside from, I think the 2 QBs, there's one running back and one wide receiver. So what are your thoughts on like how to construct the team in this type of league format and what his team kind of is looking like right now?
Yeah, I'm still fully understanding the rules. So two tight end premium, 3 points per reception for tight ends, and a 0.25 per carry. So, honestly, that is probably one of the more confusing league settings I've seen. Honestly, in this setting, just because of best ball in general, and just because you also have deep rosters, depth, like Corey kind of mentioned, is absolutely critical in this type of league. The fact that it's a start 14 and a best ball means that you want as many players that can hit a certain ceiling in any given week as possible. So while we focus, on cornerstone franchise type of assets in a regular dynasty league, those guys lose slight value when you're talking about a best ball because you're looking at the aggregate versus what that player in my lineup slot versus that other 2 players in my lineup slot can offer me from a points basis.
Yeah, I would say the only positions that kind of maintain their value would be the top end quarterbacks, and you have 2 of them. So that's definitely, good news. I would say this year you're probably not going to be like in a competitive window, just given Kyler Murray's injury. He's going to be coming back, and you still have some pieces that need to develop at running back and stuff. And you're not really going to be adding any influx of talent without your first and your second rounder in 2023. So, I mean, this year is probably going to be more like compete for 2024. So if anybody's having a monster breakout year, like James Cook, for example, maybe he gets like 6 games where he's like the starter for the Bills. Alexander Mattison maybe goes to a great free agent landing spot. You could sell him for some profit, a second rounder in 2024 or whatever. I'd definitely be looking to make moves like that. But overall, I think in terms of how I would want to construct my team in this type of league format, I would probably want to build like a very solid like hero RB with a loaded wide receiver core. And I think you've kind of already set up the framework for that. Because if you were to fill out your running back core with a bunch of Madison, Cook, types like that, you're going to get spike weeks out of those guys here and there. You never have to choose when to start those guys. So if you had yourself one cornerstone running back to fill out your RB slot most of the time, and then the rest of the time between your tight ends, between your wide receivers, between your other running backs supplementing flex production, you're probably in a good spot. So it's a lot to consider in this league. He says, I know this is kind of a loaded question, but overall thoughts and recommendations. He said this was a mid-season startup last year with rookie picks in it. So for me, my thoughts and recommendations would be don't be attached to really any one player on this roster this season, because I think you might be a year away from competing, a couple pieces away from competing, even though this is a pretty solid roster given the league structure. You have a deep wide receiver core, you have a couple tight ends and a 2-point tight end premium, and you have great quarterbacks. I wouldn't be married to any one player, and I'd be looking to punt for future 2024 picks if the league market doesn't value them that highly.
Yeah, and the other player I'd be looking to move, especially maybe he gets a free agency deal. Your league is a little bit more reactionary, would be a guy like Dalton Schultz. You already have Goddard as your main guy. You have
Gesicki too. He's a free agent as well.
Yeah, Gesicki and Chig as well for depth. You have a lot of depth at the tight end position that a guy like Dalton Schultz, if he fetches a top 8, top 10 tight end in Dynasty type of price tag, then you could fully invest in, potentially maybe adding a running back in the draft, or maybe you add another wide receiver. You have basically the mercy to be able to add another depth piece to your running back and wide receiver position, which ultimately you need to be the strongest if you want to win.
Yeah, I would say, given that's a 10 flex league, I'm looking to build out like 7, 8 deep at wide receiver, a couple tight ends that of value that can provide you spike weeks at the very least, which you kind of already have built up right now, and then pretty light at running back with some stud quarterback. So I'd say the framework is there for this team to become great. You kind of just need to make some micro moves here and there, capitalize on some value spikes and value dips on some players, and kind of continue chugging along. So the next team we're going to break down here is from Jason. Also a patron here, 10-team, 1 quarterback league. I guess it's 1 quarterback day over here. 6-point per passing touchdown, Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson. I mean, I wish this was a super flex league because you have Hurts, Watson, and Daniel Jones. That would be a great quarterback core. Unfortunately, just a 1 quarterback league. But Travis Etienne, I believe that is Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Rashad Penny, and Michael Carter. So quite deep at running back, but only like 1 high-level asset with Travis Etienne. Diggs, Higgins, Godwin, Hollywood Brown, Tony, Gabe Davis, Tim Patrick, et cetera, at wide receiver. Then Travis Kelce is his main tight end with Kmet, Irv, and Jawan Johnson as depth. Also has the 102, the 105, a 2024 second, but does not have his first. And he has 3 2025 first. So I would say pretty well set up team to compete right away, just given the strength of his roster. He's got some older running backs, but at this point in time, those guys aren't going to fetch you a ton in trade value. So it's possible that they could be good depth pieces for a competitive roster. Is that your kind of thoughts on the team as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, your team is pretty much set up at every position, right? You got pure difference makers at the quarterback. You have an embarrassment of riches for the most part. Heck, I would even be inquiring maybe if somebody was in desperate need of a quarterback, you can get some value for one of them at that point. See what the market is. Maybe that can transfer into another added wide receiver, or maybe you can dump Watson plus Kamara or Watson plus, Leonard Fournette or something and get a more stable running back. You have a lot of options to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the way that you're going to be able to offload these running backs if you can. I mean, last offseason, when you guys were listening to us do Dynasty Decisions, it was very clear and obvious. Anytime we saw Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara on people's teams, we were like, go sell them. They still have first-round value. But it's a little different this offseason, right? Because people have kind of recognized now that those guys might be over the hill a little bit. They're, 27, 28 years old, and we saw them decline from like an efficiency standpoint. So those guys don't have the same market value as they did last offseason. So in situations like this, sometimes nobody's going to give you shit for these guys, and it actually makes sense if you're a competitive team to potentially hold on to them if all you're being offered is late 2nd round, early 3rd round picks for Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. So for me, I think you're probably okay to hold them. But like Danny said, if you can use like if somebody needs a QB and you can offload Watson and Kamara for, a better wide receiver 3 type or wide receiver 2 type or a running back 2 or something like that, that would also make some sense. He has some points here. He said he made a trade recently. He flipped Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins. So he also had Akers and Dobbins on top of this running back core at one point for the 102 to secure Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then he also wants to know what to do with his 105. So he's smitten with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Don't blame you. I know a lot of people are very high on JSN. I think that's a fine pick at 102 in a 1-quarterback league. And then at 105, what are your thoughts? I mean, mathematically, you're going to get one of Bijan, Gibbs, or the top 3 receivers, or Charbonnet if he goes really high in the draft. Is that kind of the direction you think he should go?
Yeah, no, I would personally go, at the 105. So we know right now Bijan and JSN are going to be the 101 and the 102. 103, 104 is going to be a combination probably of QJ and Jordan Addison or Jahmyr Gibbs. And then you're just going to get the one that falls out of that 3 bunch.
Yeah, and I'd imagine just given how Addison tested and weighed in, he might be the one that's available at 105, which is pretty wild that you could walk out of this draft and add JSN and Jordan Addison to this team. So, yeah, you could definitely walk away. And he still has 3 2025 firsts to be able to, transition into running back production. If his running backs by the end of or the middle of this season are all over the hill, off the cliff, like Connor, Kamara, Cook, they all are useless for fantasy, like Ezekiel Elliott types or something like that. You could always transition one of those 2025 firsts in season for a younger running back productive piece to help you push yourself into a championship this season, because obviously when you have Travis Kelce on your team, you're probably trying to look to win. It's like the number one example of a team looking to win now is possessing Travis Kelce on the roster. So yeah, definitely you're in a good spot. He also has a couple questions here. He said he's looking to move off of these older running backs, but his plan is to hold out until closer to the start of the season or in season when they have more value or when their roles are a little bit more clear or injuries happen, whatever the case is. He said he's looking to move for picks in 2026. So if you can get a 2026 first for Dalvin Cook, I think you could survive with the running back depth that you currently have. If you move off of, let's say, just Cook and Kamara and the rest of the guys are gravy on your roster, and you somehow get Jahmyr Gibbs to fall to you at 105 or Charbonnet's there in a great landing spot at 105, then I think that would be a great way to rebuild your running back core and still punt that pick production into the future, because people are going to give away 2026 first, without even caring.
Yeah, no, it's actually funny. I remember I was the type of guy who last offseason, I was going to acquire 2025 first, and people were just basically like, I get that they're virtually nothing right now, but I just don't feel good dealing them. And I feel like that's a sentiment for a lot of people, where if you're targeting them and you basically specifically ask them about, oh, what's your 2025 first or what's your 2026 first, then they start thinking why does he want this pick? Nobody else is making an offer. What the heck's going on? And you might be able to get them for, what would cost maybe, I don't know, 2 twos nowadays. If it was 2 2023 twos versus 1 2026 first, I feel like some people would actually be at a dilemma what they would actually want from a package standpoint.
I'd venture, I guess, to say that they'd take the twos easily in most cases for most players, especially in more casual leagues as well. He also says, final question here, he's built up a little reset buffer with his 2025 draft. I think that was smart, obviously, because you have some older assets. He says, do I push hard to go and get back-to-back championships? It sounds like he won last year, or sell high on his older pieces. No, I would not sell high on Diggs or Kelce in this situation, because you have so many older pieces. To me, it makes sense to try and compete again. If you are getting just monster value for those guys, because this is more of a redraft centric league, then by all means you can make that transition. But for me, I would say in an average league market, you're probably not going to get as much for those guys as they're worth to your team in production. So I'd probably just stick with them.
I'd agree with you there. But overall, looks like you're in a good position. Clearly looking to go to that back-to-back, meaning that you've already won a championship, and winning 2 would just be absolute gravy. Good luck. Hopefully you win another championship. If want to submit this later on in the season, maybe week 3, week 4, want to see potential win now moves that you can make. Obviously you can resubmit the roster, but I think we move on to the next team.
Yeah, and that is from Travis here, a 12-team Superflex tight end premium league. He has Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett as his quarterbacks, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, the ACL bros at the top at the running back position there with Pacheco and some other depth. Garrett Wilson, Pittman, Pickens, Dotson, Kirk, Chark, Claypool, some other guys at wide receiver. Tight ends pretty bare, just a Conquo there. 103, 104, 105, 112, 205, 209, 212, 403, 503, And then it looks like none of his 2024 capital outside of his 4th rounder. And then it looks like he also has his all of his 2025 picks. So a little bit of an odd build here where he just sold off on the 2024 class. Maybe this league is just super high. Maybe he lives in Southern California or something like that, and everybody's enamored with Caleb Williams and wants a shot at him. I don't know what the case is in this league here, Travis, but I'd say, war chest wise this year, you're in a pretty good spot to be able to add to this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have two huge leverage pieces because realistically, I mean, first of all, once you add obviously whatever quarterback you prefer at the 103, maybe I'd be looking to see if you could sell off on a guy like Daniel Jones. Maybe he can get you maybe mid-first type of equity realistically from a guy who needs a quarterback. Maybe you could sell him straight up for like the 107, the 108. And at that point, you already know that the quarterback's going to go. It's a super flex league. Maybe a Quentin Johnson falls to you. And at that point, you add a wide receiver. You get rid of a Daniel Jones volatile type of quarterback. You're already adding one to supplement that with maybe a CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson at the 103. And at the 104, 105, you have a lot to play with in terms of what wide receiver, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs that you want to add to your team. So overall, yeah, I think by the end of the offseason, you can absolutely be a contender.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to selling any of these guys for veterans too. I mean, this year, because you got 2 running backs coming off of ACL tears, you're probably not going to be able to compete this year. So what I would probably do, like Danny said, is shop Daniel Jones, shop Trey Lance, some of your like more risky quarterback assets. If you were able to get great wide receiver pieces or something like that for those players, you could just supplement young quarterbacks in the draft. You could sell Daniel Jones, let's say, for like, a young wide receiver that's got some upside. Maybe somebody will give you, I'm trying to think, probably not Devontae Smith territory, but like just behind that, maybe somebody's lower on a Drake London type, and you can go from Daniel Jones plus another piece like Isaiah Pacheco and get to Drake London or something like that. And then Trey Lance, you can sell off maybe for like the 108, 109, supplement that in a draft. And then you just add, Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson at 103 and 104, or CJ Stroud and Bryce Young or something. And you're able to supplement your young quarterbacks that way. And then next year in 2024, you're ready to compete because your running backs are now healthy again. So a lot of flexibility with this team. He said he started this Dynasty League 2 years ago, didn't really do much studying before the draft. So he started a rebuild. He thought his team was coming around to compete last year, but obviously both of his running backs got injured with them going down with ACL tears. He said he's looking what to do with this draft this coming season. We kind of just touched on that stuff. He also has some trades listed here that he made. And the first one we actually talked about on our live stream recently. He said he sold Rachaad White in the 203 for Trey Lance. Again, given your team scenario, I think that was a great move to make. I'm not like all the way in on buying Trey Lance right now, but I do think given the price you paid, it's worth an upside swing. Rachaad White is probably going to lose value either in free agency or during the NFL draft when the Buccaneers, they will add somebody. I don't know when it's going to be or how expensive of an asset it's going to be, but they're going to add somebody and it's going to affect Rachaad White's value. And then 203, I mean, we're talking about, potentially day 3 running backs, like middling wide receiver prospects. You're not getting any QBs there. Maybe a tight end that has good draft capital is what you're giving up. I know it's a tight end premium, but I still am very comfortable doing that for a potentially great quarterback if Trey Lance does hit.
Yeah, and basically adding to it, right? Before that happened, he traded Schultz for the 203. So in theory, this trade just basically Rachaad White and Dalton Schultz for Trey Lance. Sign me the heck up.
Yeah, that's definitely a easy pill to swallow. Even if Rachaad White has like an RB2 season this year and Dalton Schultz is a top 10 tight end, I think you're probably fine making that trade. He also said, so he got unlucky with the ACL injuries to his running backs, but he got very lucky with an ACL injury to his quarterback because he sold Kyler Murray a week before he tore his ACL for Trevor Lawrence and Michael Pittman. Now, I think there's a sizable difference now in terms of dynasty value between Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray. I think most people would say probably give or take a first rounder in difference for those two guys. And then Michael Pittman also like a 4th, 5th, 6th round startup pick on top of it. So you definitely lucked out on this side of the trade. You got unlucky with the running back injuries, but definitely great move here to secure a younger quarterback with a lot more, liquidity on the open market right now because Kyler's injured.
Yeah, no, overall, I think you're making some very good moves. Like we kind of said, I think you can compete once your running backs are healthy, but until Breece Hall and Javonte Williams fully come back from their injury, it's probably closer to a 2024 team, like Corey was saying, especially maybe, one of those picks that you have, the 105, maybe you add, a Jahmyr Gibbs plus some wide receivers with some of that equity that you have to this team overall. I think you can absolutely compete once those
Yeah, and I
running
mean
backs are fully
112,
healthy.
205, 209, 212, those will be
Yeah.
in range for running back prospects as well, depending on that. And also, it's a tight end premium draft too, so a tight end is definitely in play at 112. If Michael Mayer slides there, I think he would definitely be a great addition to this team, as would, Kincaid and Washington potentially at like 205 area as well.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of flexibility with these picks. It looks like you've built up a pretty solid war chest, but we can move on to a couple free submissions here. And for those of you guys that have submitted free submissions and you want an update on like kind of where we're at, these are from like February 5th, 6th, 7th area. So if you submitted a team, March 5th or something like that, we're quite a ways away. I think we have like 36 or 37 in the queue right now. So like I said, the way to skip the line will obviously be go over to the new site that we announced at the beginning of the video. But let's get into Jesse's team here. He said it's going into his second year, drafted receiver heavy in an auction draft, and he ended the season in 9th out of 10. No QB2 most of the year and no running backs equaled a bad year. What are our thoughts going forward on this year's draft? Who should he take with the 3 first? Any moves to make with guys like Lance and with Purdy and some of the other dudes here? So his team, you guys can see it there. It's 10-team Dynasty, Superflex, half PPR, Trey Lance, Justin Herbert, Zach Wilson, Brock Purdy, Mitch Trubisky, and some other guys there. Just A.J. Dillon types, Brian Robinson at running back, then CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Pretty loaded wide receiver core there. That's like 4 of my top 8 dynasty wide receivers there. Dotson, some other depth pieces like Elijah Moore there. And then also Pat Freiermuth and David Njoku at tight end. And then some pick capital, like he said, as well, the 102, the 105, and the 106. And then his 302 and 402. Does not have his first, though, in 2024. He might have sold that. I don't know what he actually did with that. But what are your thoughts on the team? And what are your thoughts on some of the questions that he has there with Lance and Purdy?
Yeah, so you clearly have a good team at the top end. Your wide receivers are absolutely loaded, 5, 6 deep there. Tight end obviously set there with Pat Freiermuth, very stable, top 8 level option. But like you said, the main pillar for you to fully be able to compete is getting one more quarterback and is getting additions to this running back backfield. Because for the most part with this running back backfield, I actually like how you've coordinated it to have guys that have a lot of value accrual if they were to get more opportunity. Guy like A.J. Dillon, if Aaron Jones misses any time, immediately going to give you a running back 1 type of production. Brian Robinson, kind of the same thing over there with Washington when it comes to Antonio Gibson. A guy like Alexander Madison, once he signs to his new backfield, you have the framework for good depth at the position, but you still need maybe 1 or 2 like pure week-to-week type of guys that you can have in your lineup. And I do think at 105, you can add one this year with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. So if you can get Jahmyr Gibbs at the 105, add him to this team. 102, I'm already pegging for a guy like Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson or whatever quarterback you want to have at that spot. And you could basically go into a year with at least 1 anchor running back with Jahmyr Gibbs, with Herbert, with Lance, and with maybe, Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So he wants to know what to do with Lance and Purdy as well. To me, I want to mitigate the risk of that situation. I'm firmly in the category of like, I don't know what's going to happen there, and I would like to offload that risk if I can. So to me, you sell the package, right? You sell Lance and Purdy together to somebody because they're worried about the situation probably too, and they want the double condom play. If Lance doesn't work out, at least they have Purdy as the starter in San Francisco. What I would potentially be doing is looking to buy low on a guy like Jonathan Taylor, or looking to buy low on somebody like that who can influx immediate running back production to your team. You add a 102 Bryce Young to this team, and then suddenly you're in probably a house money type of year, if not a competitive window. But for me, if you can't get that type of option, obviously going for draft capital like a mid-first or something like that in 2024, you could also go after wide receiver talent similar to the ones that you've kind of built out in your team right now. Chris Olave or something like that for Lance and Purdy seems like a pretty decent deal that you could be able to get done as well. But as far as like, if your team stayed as is right now, how would I spend these picks? I would take Bryce Young at 102. I would probably take Jahmyr Gibbs with either the 105 or the 106. And then hopefully another quarterback falls to you at 105. And you can just take CJ Stroud because people are worried about the Carolina Panthers landing spot or something like that. But if you can't, you could always just go with your top ranked receiver or sell that pick to whoever wants JSN or whoever wants, whatever, move down in the draft, maybe grab another running back or, punt that pick to 2024 or something like that. You got a lot of flexibility with those 3 first. So there's a lot of, things you can do. There's no one size fits all kind of advice that I can give you here. So just address your quarterback position, start to fill out your running back core. And this is at least a house money team this year.
Yeah, I definitely think you can have the framework to compete. I don't know. I'm obviously higher on Lance than you are, but I personally just think, adding one quarterback would honestly be fine to this build. But either way, I mean, no matter where you slice it, at least one running back needs to be added this offseason if you truly want to compete. And at least one quarterback has to be added to this group. So overall, good work. You have the framework to be able to make those necessary changes. And if you do, your wide receivers are already loaded and your tight end is already set. So good work there. We can move on to the next team. That's going to be from Ayush, a 12-team Superflex half PPR league. I'll let you take it away with this team.
Yeah, Mahomes, Carr, Zach Wilson, Darnold, some other guys at quarterback there, running backs. He's got Rashad White, Madison. I feel like Madison's been on literally every team that we've talked about so far. CEH and some other dudes there. Wide receivers, Olave, Amon-Ra, DK, Ayuk, Elijah Moore, and some other dudes there. And then Kyle Pitts is his main tight end with some solid depth as well. 107, 203, 212, and some fourth rounders in 2023. He has his first in 2024 and an additional second and fourth, and then an additional second in 2025 as well. So overall, looking at the team, like I said, it's 12-team Superflex. So pretty obvious to me that he's built out the framework that we kind of always talk about, build out your QB core. Still lacking, I would say, a solid QB3 at this point in time. I think Derek Carr is probably your QB3, but you're missing a QB2 type. And then your running back core is obviously very barren with just like handcuffs and like upside pieces. But your wide receiver core and tight end core are pretty stout at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your team basically looks like how I would build a team. You get a strong anchor at quarterback, if not two here. I usually get two, but Mahomes and Carr should more than be capable to carry you this year at the quarterback position. Maybe you add one other, fringe option once you're in season. That's fine, though. That's a thing to worry about way in the future. But overall, top two quarterbacks, Mahomes, Carr, newly of the New Orleans Saints. I think you're going to get some solid production there. Running backs, not ready yet, but like we said, there's a lot of opportunity here. Maybe a Charbonnet at the 107, day two running back at the 203, maybe falls to you. A guy like Chase Brown goes at the end of the third round. You can get him there at the 203. A lot of options there to supplement some of your running backs this year. And then at wide receiver and tight end, I mean, you got the gold standard. You're 5 or 6 deep there at wide receiver. So in terms of how you've built this thing out so far, I think you've done a great job.
Yeah, my first instinct would be to see how much it costs me to get up from 107 to 104 to secure a top quarterback. If you can go up from 107 to 104 with just the 203 or potentially even less, maybe just a 212 and 2/4 or something like that, you could probably get up to at least CJ Stroud. And I would feel a lot more comfortable with your quarterback core if you had one of those top 3 young quarterbacks. You could always take Will Levis, I suppose, at 107. But to me, I think I would rather see how much it costs to go up for one of the better options. And if you have suddenly this quarterback core is Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, and Derek Carr, and you still somehow have your 203 to spend on a running back, and then come 2024, you can spend most of your draft capital, allocate most of those picks to the running back position, and then you're going to be ready. All of your receivers are still young. You have a 22-year-old tight end. Patrick Mahomes ain't going anywhere, so you have time to be able to build out the rest of this team around the running back position, and I wouldn't be opposed to selling the 2 current guys that you have even too. With Rashad White and Alexander Mattison, their value is kind of spiked right now. If you can get rookie picks in 2024 for them, I would say that would be the direction I would go, because that's also going to tank your own 2024 first, put you in the range of, Raheem Sanders or Travion Henderson, whatever running back you covet in that draft class. If you could somehow flip both of those guys into an additional future first to be able to fill out your running back core, you could really, really set this thing up to be, you just drop those rookie running backs right into this team and you're ready to compete in 2024.
Yeah, no, I agree with you overall. Again, great job so far. Does have a couple trades listed here. We can go through them pretty quickly, but first deal sent out Geno, and a second got Zach Wilson. Tried buying low on Wilson earlier in the year. Didn't really work out. Yeah, this is unlucky. Obviously, the downside risk did eventually materialize with this deal for you, but at the time, I understand the process. You're looking at this, 30-year-old journeyman quarterback who came out of nowhere. Nobody knows what's going on. Is it just, a one-time thing? Is it a 3-game stretch, or is he going to do it the rest of the year? Nobody realistically knew what the heck Geno Smith was doing at that time that you made this deal. 2023 second, you're looking at it like, hey, I'm buying in on a 23-year-old quarterback, just got selected second overall. Nobody could have anticipated that level of prospect, that level of insertion for the Jets ends up materializing into what he's worth now.
Yeah, I got kind of lucky because I was obviously the Zach Wilson truther, and somehow I ended up selling Zach Wilson as the only Zach Wilson move I made during the season, because I sold almost an inverse deal of this where I sold Zach Wilson and the 203, I think is what it became, for Deshaun Watson during the season when he was on suspension. So I mean, it's pretty crazy. I understand the thought process. I would have probably made this move given what we knew at the time as well. He has another trade listed here. He sent away Jimmy Garoppolo, the 307 and a 2024 third in exchange for the 203 and a fourth. He said he realized that early 2023 seconds would be more valuable, and he traded a spare older quarterback. Yeah, I don't blame the move. I
don't mind it.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair value given what you knew at the time. Garoppolo could spike in value a little bit, I would say, this offseason if, Washington brings him in or Houston brings him in or a place where he can actually be a starter brings him in. Maybe the Jets miss out on Aaron Rodgers and he's their fallback plan or something like that. So he could spike in value and that could hurt you a little bit. But for the most part, I think this was a fine move. I don't know how you managed to do this, but you trade away James Robinson for Brandon Ayuk. That is he fleeced the competitive owner who lost Breece Hall. That is an absolute steal of a trade there. Ayuk is worth probably 10 rounds additional value on James Robinson at this current point in time. Although I don't think James Robinson's a terrible, buy really low on him right now because he's a free agent and he's, coming off of the Achilles tear for, his second season now. I think he actually is not bad of a buy low, but I ain't buying him for Brandon Ayuk. So that's a great move right there. Jeff Wilson, you sold midseason. He probably needed production. You got the 212 and the 412, obviously pretty easy. He said he won the championship, so it became the 212, which is unfortunate, but still I would take a late second and a late fourth over Jeff Wilson right now.
Absolutely. And then the final deal, got 2 seconds and Noah Fant for Miles Sanders, sold off productive running back to try and improve the value of my 2023 pick. Would have been the 105 if I missed the playoffs. Yeah, I think this is a very, very savvy move. Obviously, Miles Sanders giving, top 20 level production in season when he was healthy. But ultimately here, he's a very volatile in terms of his value type of piece in Dynasty, going for a second contract, not really a true needle mover at the position. So I do think getting 2 seconds and Noah Fant is a nice little package to sell out.
Yeah, and I'll quickly answer his last couple questions here. He said, should I buy younger running backs like Swift or continue to punt the position? I would fill your running back position out in 2024, like we kind of already touched on. What is the best way to use my draft picks this year? Again, we said kind of look to see what it costs to get a second quarterback. At this point in time, if, worst case scenario, I probably wouldn't add a Charbonnet at 107. I'd probably be looking to sell that pick because if all the quarterbacks go ahead of you, Will Levis will probably still be on the board and you can sell him, or you could take him yourself, or so that means some of the receivers have fallen down if Will Levis is off the board and JSN might be on the board or Gibbs might be on the board and you can sell that pick or take that player. So just see how the draft board falls and kind of maneuver accordingly. Said current plan is to take best player available with draft picks and keep an eye out for buy low running backs. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty decent plan to have. So we can move on to the next team here, which is from Mark S. 12 team, Superflex tight end premium, Kyler, Purdy, Jimmy, and Brissett as his quarterbacks there. Ramondre, Henry, Connor, Madison, and some fodder at running back. Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett, John Mechie, and some other dudes at wide receiver. Mark Andrews is main tight end. He does have the 101, 107, and 108 as his picks. Didn't list any of his other picks for me. I don't believe. I can go back and check while you're breaking down the team. But he said he's obviously taking Bijan Robinson. Should he take some of the good receivers with 7 and 8, or maybe Anthony Richardson, or trade those picks? So I know what you're going to say right off the bat, and I'll let you say it.
I don't agree with just smashing Bijan Robinson at the spot, to be honest. You need 2 quarterbacks added to the team, realistically, and you need probably at least 3 wide receivers before I'm comfortable. As much as I like Bijan Robinson, adding a 4th productive running back to this team is just not the type of management of my roster I want to be doing.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the thing that I actually thought you were going to say was he said maybe take Anthony Richardson with 101.
If he's there
I probably wouldn't outright take Anthony Richardson at 101, but if you want to trade down for Anthony Richardson, I'm cool with it. Or I don't know if he also meant Anthony Richardson might be there at 7 or 8. I have no idea if that's what he meant also, but if he is, obviously that's a smash pick there as well.
I think that's what he meant.
You think he meant 7 or 8 is where Anthony Richardson's going?
Yeah. Basically said I'm obviously taking Bijan at the 1, so at 7 or 8, maybe Anthony Richardson's there.
That would be pretty insane. If Anthony Richardson is actually there at 7 or 8, that would be pretty gnarly, and that is an obvious smash pick there. He did not give me any other insight in terms of his draft capital, so that's all the draft capital he listed. He probably has his 2s or his 3s, whatever the case is. But for me, 101 is on the trade block, like you said. I'm seeing what I can get for him. Maybe trade down into quarterback range and pick up an additional 2024 first or something like that. I would look to offload my productive running backs, Derrick Henry and James Conner mainly. Also, some of your older receivers, too, with Lockett and Sutton, because Jefferson realistically is the only building block you have at that position. Lockett and Sutton are fine, like wide receiver 4 or 5s for your roster if you're competing, but they should not be your wide receiver 2 and 3. on your roster. And Andrews, as good as he is, could also fetch you a pretty penny in tight end premium. And I wouldn't be opposed to selling him, although I don't think you absolutely need to sell him on the block. And same goes for Ramondre Stevenson too, because Ramondre Stevenson has risk in his profile because he's a 4th-round running back. There's a chance that they add some competition to that backfield. I've heard people say and speculate that if Bijan Robinson's there at 14, that Bill Belichick might pull the trigger on him.
Damn, that would be very interesting here. So overall, yeah, you have too much volatility at your running back right now in terms of age and everything, and then not enough at your quarterback and wide receiver for me to feel comfortable when you competing this year. However, like Corey kind of said too, you sell off on a guy like Ramondre Stevenson. I don't know, maybe it's a more productive league market. They value that type of stuff, and you can still somehow get mid-first round type of equity for Derrick Henry, or maybe you have to add Henry and Connor and get somebody's, mid-projected 2024 first. I would rather do that. Take a year to, retool a little bit, add a quarterback 100% if you can here, and then overall try to look to compete and flip this roster with more depth by 2024.
Yeah, because, I mean, realistically, you have a couple pieces, but not enough, which means I'm holding on to pretty much Kyler and Jefferson and nobody else. And the only reason I'm holding on to those guys is because, Jefferson's is just a stable asset, and Kyler is coming off an ACL tear, so you're probably not going to get adequate value for him. So it behooves you to probably just hold on to him. Purdy, Jimmy, Brissett, Ramondre, Henry, Connor, Madison, Lockett, Sutton, Andrews, all those guys are on the block. If anybody wants me to wants to buy in on those guys, I'm definitely doing it. And same goes for your 107 and 108. If people are going to give you 2024 first and seconds for those, absolutely sell those picks during the draft as well, because you're probably not ready to compete at this point in time. So we can move on to the next team here, the last team of the video, which is from Braxton, a 12-team, 1 quarterback, no tight end premium. He says redraft centered. So it's a very, redraft centered market. We always appreciate that insight. Rodgers and Lance as his main quarterbacks, Brees, Penny, Pacheco as his main running backs, Chase and Jefferson and Higgins and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. So the Bengals and Jets receiving core is on lock basically with this team. Kyle Pitts is his main tight end, also possesses the 101, 102, 104, 105, 106, 109, 111, and 3 2s, including 2 of them in the mid-second round there as well. Does not have his first in 2024, which is weird. I feel like nobody has in this video. So he said this is his team. He hasn't fully updated all of his trades, but this is his current roster heading into the 2023 season. His 2023 picks, he said he's looking to go something along the lines of, I'll just read off what he has listed here. Again, it's a 1 quarterback league, so remember that for this. He said he's going to go Bijan at 101. Duh. Gibbs at 102, which is fine. JSN or Johnston or Addison at wide receiver at 104. He said 105, Mayer, Tucker, best receiver. I mean, Tucker, he sent this in February. So Tucker probably not in consideration anymore because we know what his kind of draft capital situation is going to be. And then, 106, kind of same thing there. 109 BPA, 111 BPA. He said the reason he has Mayer listed so highly is because a lot of people really value tight ends in this league. And, again, it is a tight end premium format as well. To me, I still think that's too high for Michael Mayer. 109 is probably the highest I'd be willing to pay given the picks that you have. I probably wouldn't be willing to pull the trigger 105 and 106 just given the depth of the tight end class. Yeah,
not to mention you already have Kyle Pitts, so reaching for him wouldn't really benefit your point production. So you're going to be fine there. Yeah, this team has the framework to absolutely dominate this year. But like you said, the only maybe concern here is, say you have Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Brace is coming back from his injury. Penny's maybe easing his way into a new situation. While I like the upside for it long-term throughout the year, I do think those first, 5 or 6 weeks, especially when Brees is fully coming back, might be a little bit slow for you at the position. Penny coming off the injury, like I said, settling in a new backfield. The 2 rookie running backs playing in their first, 5 or 6 games while Brees is out. It might affect your winning this year. However, though, I mean, the value long-term that you've built, I absolutely think by 2024, you might run these guys out of the league.
Yeah, no, this is an easy one for me. I think even if that's the case, like what you outlined, flip the 212 for James Conner or something. I don't really care. I'll buy one productive veteran just to make sure I'm on track early on in the season if I have to start a guy like James Conner in Arizona. Because once you get this running back core loaded of Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs for the long term, plus whoever else you add with your other picks, 109, 111, 204, 205, your running back core is more than capable of competing. I would also absolutely look to grab a quarterback in this draft class, 109 or 111, potentially even 106 if Anthony Richardson's going to be valued that highly in your league. I think 109 should be a very easy quarterback pick for me, whether it's Young, whether it's Richardson. Rodgers and Lance are fine, but I would rather have a much better quarterback. And also, you don't even have to draft a quarterback because you're ready to compete already. You could just buy low on a veteran quarterback, take Trey Lance in the 109 and go after Lamar Jackson like we talked about for the first team of this video, and he would be ready to elevate this team beyond, because you're set at every other position. Quarterback would actually at that point be the only position that you're not set at. So I'm okay even overpaying potentially for an elite quarterback.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there.
Yeah. So I would say you don't really need much help because you're just ready to go. Just flip this thing once you spend those draft picks. You're at very least a very, very high house money team this year, if not ready to compete right from jump. Once Breece Hall's back on the field, once you get some of these rookies into the swing of things, this team will be pretty dominant. So like I said at the beginning of the video, make sure to check out our new site, flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE for 30% off any of the annual packages. I also didn't mention that if you pay annually, it is like cheaper than our Patreon was for way, way more value. So definitely big time benefit for you guys. Definitely go check out a free 2-day free trial as well. When you sign up, you can check out everything that's available on the site for free for 2 days, just like you would for, a streaming service or whatever. So definitely feel free to sign up for a free trial and see what we got to offer over there. If you like what you see, obviously sign up for one of the packages and we'll get you involved in our new Dynasty Startup League that we are going to be starting probably Friday or Saturday this week. We'll get everybody set up and into the league. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure to sign up over on Flock Fantasy. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, check out our sponsors, of course, down below in the links in the description, Aura, Mint Mobile, Underdog Fantasy, all that stuff. We appreciate them for sponsoring the channel. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Why you need the money?